Oh, we're
All
good.
right. Very good. This is Jeff Krisman, and we're very joyous, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be visiting with Seth Leaf Pruzansky. Seth, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate this.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it as well.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I want to, before we start the conversation, I really wanted to take a moment and honor your journey. And I also do want to honor, I'd read recently, and I love this phrase, and I'm probably paraphrasing this a little bit, but what I read about you was that you wake up every day and you are continuing this quest and living in a way that actually brings joy to yourself, to other people around you, and to the world. And I really honor that.
Oh, I look, to the degree I do that is to the degree that I actively choose to make a habit out of doing it. Like, yeah, you're
Oh
absolutely
yeah,
right, but it's like it takes the willingness to do that and commit to it and realize almost that we are like a power plant generator, and realize that about yourself in order to bring up that much love and joy of self and life and then live in this life, because there's so much conditioning working against it. It's hard to it can be difficult to not live like that often. A lot can get in the way. So nice
absolutely, man. I,
paraphrase.
I appreciate that. And I was going to ask you, it would be really interesting to hear about your journey and what I wanted to ask you, just in terms of how you discovered these practices, and in other words, how you got on the spiritual path. And I realize that's just a phrase,
Yeah.
but really understanding more about your process of discovery and that inner growth, and that I heard it referred to as self liberation. So I thought it'd be
Mm.
really cool just to kind of understand and hear hear about that.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I feel like it's it's just what it is. It's just like, I think, and for anybody who is not caught up in thinking something or believing something or disbelieving something, I think anybody who's just paying attention to the way things are while their belief or disbelief is suspended, you can begin to see that there is an innate intelligence in your body, right? That has a flow to it. It's a natural flow of the way things work. You can see it in nature. You can look up in the sky at night and you can see it there. And just as a young child, I just realized that there was something way greater than who I thought I was happening. And as a young child, it just felt so much better to focus on that, because it was like when I focused on it, I could feel that flow. I could feel that thing that was like, this feels amazing. And when I wasn't focused on it, I didn't feel that. And when I wasn't focused on it, I was focused on this conditioning that everybody is being subjected to. Oh, this is me. I'm this person. This is my life. I'm gonna be whatever I am because society told me so. I'm a consumer. I'm gonna buy all these things. I'm a consumer of information. Like, instead of, wow, no, I'm actually something that's able to generate, not produce, right? Not consume. I can produce something that is aware of what is already going on, and there in turn something happens. An amplification of that takes place. And so I feel like, I've been aware of it since I was a child, but again, it's like it's not. I think what's more of a miracle, or what's more of a big deal, is that so many people aren't aware of it, because it's all there really is.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. And I was reading a story, about a time you as a child out in the woods, and I thought it was very interesting what you were speaking of. That at some point, and if I understand this correctly, that you were no longer a child in the woods, quote unquote, but you were a part of a vast energy field. And so it would be very interesting just to hear anything. I don't know if that was one of your first formative experiences with this.
Yeah. I just realized really young, I was like, okay, there's some kind of energy that's causing my heart to beat. And, everybody's so focused on who they think they are. But I was like, for whatever reason, I was like, what am I? Not who am I? Like, what am I? Seems like it's much more of an important inquiry than who am I? And what am I? It's like, okay, that takes suspending all belief and disbelief because what I am isn't a belief. It isn't, it is some form of energy that there aren't names for that's causing the heart to beat, that in turn empowers all of these incomprehensibly mysterious and miraculous functions of our body to take place faster than the speed of light, and that somehow allows our awareness, our consciousness itself to be animated within our being and then us to be aware from that place. So who am I is was much more of a secondary expression of what am I. To me, what am I was way more interesting and fascinating. Who am I is like, who gives a crap who I am. I did like I what I am, right? And this is for
Oh yeah.
everybody way more interesting to me. So that I as a child again, it was like I realized that there was something going on that was way more profound than who I thought I was, or who I thought my parents were, or who I thought my friends were, and like there was something else taking place. And my God, whenever I would focus on it, it would just allow me to go into infinity. Literally, I could just focus on it, and the awe and wonder and mysteries of it went from, surface deep out into the depths of the ocean of energy that I couldn't even come close to comprehending. Still can't, but again, it was there. It was always there. And so the idea of, oh, I'm this person, I'm going to live in this world, I'm going to work 9 to 5, I'm going to earn money and do all this stuff so that I can live the last few years of my life and then die didn't make sense to me as a young kid because it was like, what if I'm having a crazy deja vu right now as we're speaking? It's really, I love it when that happens because as I dig deep into this, like things that we all are already aware of just start to become self evident. We sold ourselves out. We gave ourselves away. And we didn't even consciously remember that we did it. But deep down, we do remember that we did this and why we did it. And now we've come to a point in the evolutionary journey of the human soul and the human identity where the two are integrating so definitively. There's no way to like pretend one isn't directly involved without the other. And so all these deeper things that have been kind of swept under the rug for countless generations are now coming up all at once for everybody and everything to face. And if we don't face it, then we get kind of put through the grinder, you could say.
Oh yeah.
But on the other side of it, to face it is to feel the intensity of these long, unfelt, unthought of, unacknowledged, collective, self evident universal truths that we, on the individual level, have not taken responsibility for. And to be an individual and to feel that there is a collective aspect to our own consciousness that we as individuals are being called to take responsibility for on a personal level can be very scary to a lot of people because that's a lot to take on. But at the
Oh
same
yeah.
time, there's no choice. We don't have an option. And so it's this constant process of like, okay, like if I need to die now, I'm going to do it. But what I'm not going to do is ignore this process anymore. I'm going to keep facing it no matter how brutal it is, no matter how many people around back out and don't want to face it, like I'm in it until the process is done because I remember all of these deep subconscious memories of this life and countless others where I didn't do it. And it's not being swept under the rug in this life anymore. And I think there's enough of us who know this or are acknowledging this or are feeling this. and we're choosing to step up to the plate and take responsibility for a lot of that, if that all makes sense.
Oh, it definitely does. It definitely does. In fact, I was going to ask you, I've had, a couple of situations recently, and I'm just curious if this has happened to you at all, sharing this with someone and maybe not knowing exactly where they are in terms of their consciousness. And you kind of see that sort of you see something in the eyes, I feel like, of people when it maybe it's a little bit too real. And so I didn't know. I'm just curious if you've had any situations like that or had that happen before where you're sharing something and you can tell that maybe a little too much
My
for
whole
people. I don't know if
life,
that's the right way to put it, but
yeah, my whole life I've been doing that. I've always, I knew early on though that as a result of realizing this stuff and then actively working to embody it, I knew that I was going down a road that wasn't going to have many allies. I knew I wasn't going to get a lot of support from human beings. I knew it. I was very, very aware. And the opposite happened. There was a lot of, uh, there was a lack of support, a major lack of support to the degree, everything from this is crazy, it makes no sense, or people just in denial of it, or why would you do this? You're going to work at a gas station, you're going to be a loser your whole life, you're going to be like all these things, from that all the way to people who were willing to go a little bit deeper into it and then be like, "Oh, you're a witch. You're playing with black magic. You're playing with all these things." And it's like, "No, you're feeling the parts of yourself that you have long swept under the rug and unacknowledged, and you don't like that it's being brought up in the presence of somebody who is facing their shit."
oh
So
yeah.
when people feel their own stuff come up and they know that it's because they are in the presence of somebody who's gonna face their own shit no matter what, they can get defensive because the ego, right? It wants to defend its claim. Like, this has got to be real. This is, no, who I am is what matters, not what I am. They're still addicted to who they are. And so the what I am part of it is like scares the living hell out of them, but it's meant to. It's meant to scare it out of you because once it's gone, then you can be open to what you truly are beyond these countless years of suffering that we've seemingly all swept under the rug, but that is now all emerging at once.
Oh, that's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that. And I was wondering too, just as a child, were you able to talk to your parents? I mean, I didn't know if there was anyone that you could speak to about these things when you got to the age where you could articulate this. It just would be interesting to know, just in terms of what that was like for you as a child.
For the longest time, I mean, I couldn't articulate it, and I still can only articulate it at very, compared to what I'm aware of, what I can, 'cause a lot of people are like, oh my God, you can articulate this so well. And it's like, I wish, like, what I'm aware of, if I could articulate even a portion of that, then things would really be happening. So I feel like my ability to articulate what I'm actually aware of, especially in this language that we're speaking, that it was never mine even to begin with, is very basic. It's very much in the beginner stages. And so, when I was a little kid, I didn't have the level of articulation that I do now. I just had this feeling. I had this awareness. And I just, all I would say was things like, I would just make comparisons. Like, we're the same thing as the animals. We're the same thing as nature. Like, because that I could feel that what was causing my heart to beat was the same thing that was causing a bird to exist, that was causing a planet to exist, that was causing galaxies to exist. Like, I just felt how I was connected to all of that and how it was all one living system and that I was one piece of that in harmony with it all. So I would try to tell people that and they didn't get it, they didn't really.
Yeah, I can definitely identify. And then as far as just getting some sense of what it was like for you, just as you entered, your teenage years and entered adulthood and went out into the world. and living your life, just what that was like to a certain degree, as far as at a deeper level.
It started to get, because I had one guide, one friend who guided me, but he guided me in a way where he said, look, the more you tap into this, the more you embody it, the more quote unquote outcasted you're going to become. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going, like, I'm here to do this time, and, but he was right. So the more I began to embody that which I became aware of, the more it activated abilities and just things that, okay, I don't care what somebody believes. It's in all of us. It's in everybody. No matter who you think you are, no matter what you think your life is, no matter what you believe or what your family has believed or what their family has believed into antiquity, we all have within us abilities that are more numerous than all the stars in the night sky, but that we as individuals have lived our lives in a way where we've temporarily become seemingly detached from these, and no place to run, no place to hide anymore. Like, it's coming, it's here, it's
Oh
knocking on
yeah.
the door. So, but yeah, as a kid, as I felt those abilities start coming out and turning on, and me being able to work with them, and then feeling how afraid people would become, not of me, but of the fact that they would become aware of these things deep down in my presence, made them, because again, I would try to help them, like, see, like, you're afraid of something in you that's unresolved. That's what's causing the fear. On the other side of that fear, if you choose to face it, there won't be any fear, because it's in this realm that we perceive duality and separation and all these things. And the energy of ultimate divinity, you could say, is the same thing we're experiencing here, but it's in polarities, or it's polarized, or in dualities, and it takes on a multitude of different expressions, but it's still all that. And so, as long as we get caught up in the dualities, in what we think things are, whether what we believe them to be or disbelieve them to be, we're still feeding into this illusion of separation and perpetuating it, thus enslaving ourselves, imprisoning ourselves into something that we ultimately are the only ones that can set ourselves free from it. So that's, I would always try to help people, like, realize, like, look, okay, whether or not you want to face it now, that's on you, but you're gonna face this. You're unequivocally going to face this. Doesn't it make sense to face it now? you know
Oh yeah, yeah. It's and I get a sense too in terms of just through your life journey, were there any critical turning points where you started to realize some of these things that you? It'd be interesting. Anything that I definitely don't want to put you on the spot, but anything that you would be comfortable
Oh no, you
to
could put
share.
me on. I My whole life is, I'm used to being put on the spot. I've had public exposure, like being exposed publicly, the most embarrassing things. So I don't care. I actually welcome it, because to me these are all things that are part of my own quote unquote karmic evolutionary development that I'm here to face and face fully, so that it may ultimately be resolved for the greater good of what's happening. So, what was the question again?
That's my favorite. I love that. Yeah, I was going to ask you, and I speak from experience in terms of when you speak about in terms of karmic stuff and going through the journey of being human, and I can sit here all night and talk to you about ways in which I just got in my own way and made decisions that I wish I wouldn't have, and learned the hard way. So that's what I say. This is said with the utmost love and respect, just in terms of just anything that you could share as far as just when you were at a critical turning point or multiple critical turning points in your life, when these realizations, in terms of really getting in touch with what you are, versus who you were.
There's been so many, my God. It's been like nothing but like a crunch, an evolutionary roller coaster of one type of pivotal, hairpin decision experience after another the entire time. But I definitely can say where it really was like rubber to the road, like what am I made of type of stuff. It was through heroin addiction. I was 23, 24 years ago. I was severely addicted to heroin, to the degree where I wasn't gonna make it if I kept doing it. It was like I was on the verge of death, and I had overdosed many times, and I knew that I was going to die if I kept doing it, or at least I believed I was gonna, because there were too many. There were so many close calls where it was like I just couldn't believe that I survived, and especially with so many of my dearest friends at the time having passed and doing way less. So it was in those moments of like, okay, if I really am this, then certainly it must be able to bestow upon me the strength to get through the worst of this. And if that is true, then please be so. And I did. I got through it. I made it through. And, it was like, I remember making these little promises to myself, like, if I can make it through this and not go back ever again, then I'm gonna do whatever it wants me to do. I'm not, but not that it's any different than me. There is no separation, but it's like, okay, I'm gonna be this holy person, you could say, or what we might think of like a nun or a monk or somebody an ascetic, somebody who's gonna live their life and take all their desires and just focus on the one desire to be harmonized with this great force of energy that's animating the being and causing the heart to beat. And, after making it through that and holding true to that and being true to that, it's interesting how the ego, the dualism, the degrees of separation, you could say, that we're all subjected to, no matter who we are or what we've been through. It's amazing how that stuff can come in and seek to unravel even the most devout. Even those who have cultivated these connections that were seemingly unshakable and weren't going to move. It's amazing how something that you would never think had the ability to dismantle that could. And what I mean by that is just a simple thought, right? That's how it starts out, right? You've got this feeling that you're in connection, you're coherent with this miraculous source of energy that is animating the being and giving birth to your consciousness through you. But you allowing the thought of, oh, I'd love to have something external. I would love to have this. Or, it starts out as that, something seemingly harmless enough. But the more you indulge in it, the more you keep giving your attention and energy to that, the more you start taking the most priceless, invaluable thing that you are in alignment with, which is your awareness, and you start investing it into the material appearance of this world rather than the source of energy that allows this material appearance to exist in the first place. And the more you start to do that, the more you shift your attention away from a centered focus of the energy field that animates the heart and causes it to beat, and start focusing on external things, the more you move away from that original source of empowerment and, create karma. You could say create experiences that we've all been doing, that we all do, that we have all been doing for countless lifetimes, essentially, and that we have now come to a point in our evolutionary process where it's showing we can't do that anymore. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I love what you're talking about as far as the nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It's we keep coming back to to this, right? We keep coming back to yeah, it's ever present. And so I honor that. And I was going to say I get this sense that speaking with you right in this moment that I mean I really honor the these things that you're sharing, because I get the sense that in some ways they maybe were not easily or they maybe didn't always come easy, as far as is these realizations and this perspective that you're sharing.
they came through fire and ice. It was like, I mean, I don't want to like give it too much heroic journey kind of imagery because like it doesn't have to be so hard, but for me it was really hard, and I think for others it was too, but in many ways it's like there's enough of us, I think, who have committed to this process that are going through the hard stuff, the tough stuff enough so that others don't have to. Because now many are becoming aware, they're waking up, they're having this stuff, and they're not having to go through these, sometimes multitude, decade long dark nights of the soul that, you know, have tried, many of us tried and tested. And so, yeah, it hasn't been easy for me. However, it can be. It can be a lot easier. Not just and me makes no difference at all. Like it's us, like right now where we are as a species. Like that's what this is about. That's what it's about. But it's about we at this individual level. A lot of people want to focus on, if you focus on just the big thing, right? There's like, and this is an interesting concept in and of itself, because if you focus too much on one or the other, you kind of miss out. You miss that sweet spot. There's this in between spot where you're right in between the non physical and the physical. And if you can get into that space consciously and sustain your awareness of it, then you're able to work within both realms, you could say, at the same time, ultimately integrating them together so that there isn't this seemingly disparate gap that everybody on this side or the other appears to be so invested in. So, this is absolutely a collective evolution of the human species in real time, but its growth, its way forward is really spurred or ignited or dampened at the individual level, where the individual says, you know what, I'm either going to focus on what I am or who I am. And if you focus on who you are, then you go into the ego and the world of desire and the world of all these things that the world conditions us and teaches us is what matters, and that's the road that most have taken most of the time. The path that far less have taken, if you want to call it a path, which it isn't a path. If anything, it's a neural pathway through
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the brain and body, but it's this path that, no, it's not who I am, it's what I am. And when you begin to focus on what I am, suddenly you're focusing on the wave in quantum physics, not the particle. Like the human species, for the most part, has been conditioned to focus on the particle and ignore the wave. We're now being brought to this place where it's like, okay, we're going to go into the wave. We're going to fully immerse ourselves back into this ocean of energy. And then from that place, focus on the particle, the who we are. But it's got to be from the other way, because the way we've been doing it is we're ignoring the 99.99999% of what it is that's actually happening and focusing it all on what looks like it is that's happening when it's actually not. But the other way around, when you do it that way, there's no mistake. You're not fooling yourself, you're not fooling it. When you're in alignment, you know it, and you know how to move, you know how to act with integrity, you know how to speak with integrity, and you know how to role model, you know how to exemplify with integrity, and you know that no matter how many times you've been knocked down in the past, and no matter how many times you may be attempted to be knocked down, you're doing it no matter what.
Yeah, I love that too. And I was going to ask you, it's interesting, and I definitely went through my stages, on the so-called spiritual path, where there was a lot of those sayings and different pleasant different pleasantries and different ways of expressing what this was like. But I love what you're talking about, that it really does, without that fire and ice, without that adversity, and ultimately, like you're saying, coming face to face with our own truth, and and having that integrity with ourselves, that all the other stuff is, it probably really just fluff when it comes right down to it. I mean, I know sometimes, I remember it felt good at times, to be able to say certain things, or look at the spiritual experience in certain ways, that and I don't know if maybe in some ways, maybe for me at least, that fed the ego. There was this, what they call the spiritual identity.
Exactly. And see, that's why, I said suspending all belief and disbelief, because even talking about it, we're not we're not actually talking about it. We're just talking about ideas and philosophies and things that represent possibilities of what we're talking about. However, the more aligned an individual is with this from the inside out, and the more they're able to sustain that coherence from the source of what it actually is throughout all of these activated glands and energy centers of the body, even when we speak in this language that was taught to us, even when we conduct ourselves in this world, we can still do it in a way that is reflective of this state of being that we are unequivocally in alignment with.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because I was going to say, as someone who enjoys talking to people and having these conversations, I know that it would probably be very weird for people to, and I don't know how long people would hang with that if we just sat here basically and just were in presence together and there was no words exchanged. That in some ways, I guess I don't know. And yet I wonder, at some stage of human evolution, is it possible? I don't know if that's a fair question or not. Is it possible that's where we'll be at some point, where all the words and the concepts and the verbalization of things may not be necessary anymore?
Absolutely. And in many ways, it already is, and it will be, and it already is, and it also already has been. See, everybody's like, we're focused on stories, right? We're focused on narratives. That's the big word, the big buzzword that everybody's talking about now is the narrative. You're focused on this narrative or that narrative, or, this story or that story. And even culturally, as a species, we have passed down these, even these greater identifications or greater cultural realizations of a culture itself has been passed down through story, right? But the reality is, the more you go beyond even all that and let all that stuff go, reality, as it is, this great, indescribable thing that you really can't even put a story to, starts to look and sound a lot more like a song. Okay, it's a living frequency, it's a vibration, it's a rhythm. It's a lot more like a song than it is a story. So the more we get in tune with this as it truly is, the less we're going to feel the need to identify with stories and narratives. And the more interested we're going to become in attuning the glands and organs of our body to this great celestial symphony and orchestra that is being played throughout countless galaxies and universes, and more excitingly, through the cells and genetic makeup of our body itself. And as I said, like, this has been happening forever. It's happening now, and it'll be happening forever. So we're just going from a place where we've been stuck in this little tiny, self and societal imposed box of perception. And we're just breaking that box wide open
Oh
and
yeah.
letting
Oh man.
this song sing itself through us. And that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I thank you so much. I love that. It's incredibly moving. And I was going to ask you as well. I heard a teacher many years ago. He was speaking about this whole idea. I love how he called it conspiracy of consciousness. So I was going to ask you, in some ways, in other words, it's kind of like, basically it's kind of like an unspoken agreement that, I'll pretend like you are who you think you are if you do the same for me. And so I'm just curious if that resonates at all, in terms of, this game. it's almost like, it's the I'm okay, you're okay thing. If we just all keep pretending like like it always has been, and I'm wondering too if maybe some people are finding the limits of that, that in some ways that's running its course.
Well, as a species, we're always looking for something to identify with and become attached to because it gives us a sense of meaning, a purpose, right? Otherwise,
Oh
we're
yeah.
like, who am I? What am I? What am I going to like? So we're always looking for something to focus on, and that focus, collectively, for the most part, has become science. And so we've gone from, whatever, an agrarian type of lifestyle, apparently, from what I understand, to this more technology focused type of thing, science based. So science has essentially become the new religious paradigm. However, science has it doesn't acknowledge the one most important aspect of all science, which is consciousness. And there's lots of reasons for that. Now, it does, okay, it does. Like the quantum sciences, there's lots of science that does absolutely acknowledge it, but it's not mainstream, you could say. It isn't accepted. That's because it doesn't fit the quote unquote narrative that most are addicted to, or actually, it's more accurate to say that most don't even realize that they're addicted to. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that's more what it's like. However, the beautiful thing in all this is that the reason why science can't, consciousness isn't brought into science is because science, as far as we know, doesn't have tools that are sensitive enough to be able to measure the subtleties of consciousness itself. But that's the beautiful thing about it because the human body is the scientific instrument that is able to detect, measure, develop, cultivate, and exponentiate the exponentiate the possibility and potential of consciousness as it animates the human being. And as exciting as that might sound or seem to some, it's also scary as hell to others. But a lot of people will don't want to take that kind of responsibility for realizing that you are the instrument to measure and analyze and create your own scientific consciousness based experience. So they're going to say, oh, there's a million excuses why people won't want to do that. They'll say, "Oh, it's too subjective." Right? The whole point
Oh
of
yeah.
science is it's got to be objective. It's got to be objective. But if you have enough individuals who are saying, "You know what? I'm not going to play that game. I don't care. I'm done. I am going to be that subjective interpretational scientific experiment that I experiment with myself, and I don't care what you think or feel or any, like, if those who are that committed, eventually, if there's enough of us who have done this, then you bring those individuals together, then suddenly you can measure objectivity, and I think that's where it's headed. Because if there's enough
Yeah.
individuals who become conscious of the nature of consciousness itself, which is essentially a living geometric field that is animating the human heart and the human organism, and when a human being who has finely tuned the receptor sites of their brain and body and taken all of their glands and their organs and attuned and unlocked the innate intelligence that is within every single one of these centers with this great living geometric field that is animating the being, then suddenly you become conscious, meaning you are perceiving this the nature of this living geometric field. And if you have enough individuals together who can quantify the reality of this which is actually more real than any of this, then suddenly how do you deny that anymore? And that's what is happening. That's why everything's become so polarized, so debated.
Ah,
There's so like everything is coming to this like literally it's like this edge. Like no, it's Trump. No, it's Biden. No, it's dark. It's night. It's like all everybody, every single system that perpetuates the illusion of division is all being brought right to the front and just crumbling all at once. And
Oh yeah, man,
a
yeah,
lot of us are like, oh my God, like, most people are scared to death. They're like, what could this mean? But then there's the few of us that are like, yep, this is what we were here for. We are doing this. We are collapsing the wave function, as they call it in quantum physics.
yeah.
There are
Oh yeah,
so many of us that are already aware there is no separation between anybody or anything, and we have become conscious of this living geometric field to the degree that we're now embodying it. And that embodiment is starting to reflect outwardly into the world around us. And that's why all of this shit, you could say, that looks like it's so real is just crumbling because it's already been done. The job's already,
oh
we've
yeah.
already finished it. Now everything else is just catching up to fit into the vision. So,
Yeah, what I think is so beautiful is that it's looking outside for the fix or the answer for that, versus no, and I guess it's kind of like I think I heard one time there was a story about a guy that had a few drinks and was trying to find he had lost his car keys, and he basically it's like he somebody asked him. He was basically looking under the light and refused to look anywhere else, and it wasn't under the light. And somebody said, "Hey, why are you looking for your keys? They're obviously not there." He said, "Well, the light's over here, so this is where I've got to look." So I don't know. It's
yeah.
it's kind of like that. It's like we know the answer is elsewhere, but we're still so busy looking outside somewhere else for it. I didn't know if that makes sense or if that resonates.
No, it does. It makes perfect sense. But the thing is, that's beautiful about that. And the thing that those, and I know they're here, like there's ones even right now watching, paying attention to this, they know this. They know this is, they can feel it. They're like, oh my God. But the conditioning of the world has built up and it has been going on for what appears to be so long that we doubt ourselves at times. But we don't have to. And eventually we're going to get to a point where we realize we never actually needed to doubt ourselves. So, but it's okay to doubt yourself. It's okay to feel that fear because you're coming up against the edges of your own evolutionary growth in harmonization with this greater evolutionary growth. At some point, it all comes from the same place. But look, those who are ignoring all this or acting like, oh yeah, what? It's nothing happening. Like it's not real.
I don't see anything.
What kind of existence can that be?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I was going to say it at some point. I guess we ultimately end up like as you were talking about earlier. We end up confronting ourselves, right? At some point, it's right here, right?
Like, okay, then this is what I like when I talk to people who totally doubt all of this. Like my entire life, I like people just like, oh, what you're saying, or oh, I'm like, look, at some point you're gonna die. Like I'm sorry to be so crude. Like we've come to this, but at some point, this physical body that you're living in, that you have not attuned to the great pulse of life itself, can't possibly keep going on. If it's attuned to the great pulse of life, who knows? Anything's possible. But
Oh
for
yeah.
all given intent, you, who as the person you think you are, you have not actively attuned your organs of perception with the great musician of the universe that is singing all of this into effect. At some point, this body's going to die, and whatever this energy is that's causing your heart to beat, you're going to have to come face to face with what that is. Like, why not come face to face with that while we are here now? Because for whatever it's worth, and people can say, oh, that's subjective too. I've had a lot of near death experiences. A lot. Many were drug induced, but many weren't. I was in a severe car accident. Doesn't matter how a near death experience is induced, how at one point they pretty much have all been the same. Like, no matter what it was that caused them, at a certain point, the energy that's animating the being, the soul, you could call it, comes to a point where it can no longer live in the human body due to blunt trauma or auto intoxication, whatever the case may be. And there's a place where you come to the edge of your human self, and you're at the edge of your human self about to transition into the pool of energy, the ocean of energy that you were initially birthed from. And in those moments, there's a conscious remembrance of, oh my God, I remember what this was all for. I remember why this happened. And your whole life times infinity flashes right before you, and you remember, and you're like, oh, if I only could just do it again.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's, I guess you could say, sad. I don't want to ascribe any meaning to it, but in for those souls who realize that and then it's too late and then they pass on, it is kind of sad because then the reincarnation comes about and you're ready to do it all over again and take it on, and you forget the conditioning, the layers of conditioning that we are born into. This world is so seemingly so dense, but that's what we have broken apart. That's what this fire and ice, that's what this hardcore roller coaster evolutionary cycle, endless cycles have been about, is we are breaking up the density that has, you quote unquote, plagued our species and imprisoned us for longer than anybody even knows or can even remember. And just letting it go and being free and living now as an embodiment of something that is not bound to density and instead is expressive of.
Absolutely. Oh man. Yeah. That's. Yeah, I was gonna say, I found myself, I kind of had that cosmic giggle, as you were describing that. I mean, I was feeling that, and it was just, man, that's, yeah, that is where it's at. That's where it's at. Yeah. And then I was going to ask, and of course, and in terms of looking at being humans, and we live life on what they call the physical plane. It would be really cool to hear anything that you might share, just as far as your evolution, how that bears itself out. Let's say, and you wake up in the morning, just getting some sense of how you live your day. Without necessarily not asking for any other details than you want to share, but just getting some sense
No.
of what it's like, what in terms of your businesses and just working in the community, just what that's like for you and how that has evolved or changed over the years.
My life's an open book, so don't worry. Like, I could care less about my story, and it like I want my child, I want the children, I want. And so many children I'm seeing now are coming into this world. They're already like there. They already know it.
Oh
They're
yeah.
there. And so it's more of our task to remind them that they're already there and that they can sustain, because it's these states of being that are greater that we're talking about, but it's in our ability to sustain them that determines whether or not we are free, sovereign beings, right? Or slaves to the matrix, as people will call it, or whatever. It
Yeah.
once you can sustain a state of coherence that starts with the heart and brain, and then the other organs get in tune, then you eventually get to a place where you live at such a frequency when everything in your body is just in tune and in harmony, that the densities that have plagued us, as I said earlier, for so many generations stop having an effect on you, because the frequency that you are embodying and sustaining breaks through all of that. So my life looks like this. Okay, and let's make it really, really simple, because I meet so many people and I talk to so many people who they want to change. And again, kids, that's where it's at. Like really, I feel like our job is like, we're in this for them. We're doing it for them. A lot of adults are really traumatized and really messed up and, have a lot of issues. But I've met so many that do want to change. And so that looks like this. It's, when you wake up in the morning, are you focused on who you are or what you are?
Yeah.
been the
Yeah.
point of the entire thing. Because if you're focused on who you are, then all of a sudden you think you matter. And but that also incites fear. Because when you're focused on who you are, the fear of, okay, what am I going to do to pay the bills? How's the business going to function? All these things that have been keeping us in a narrow focus state of, that have kept us from opening our heart and being in tune with this great symphony of the universe. It's that narrow focus state that keeps us that way. But when you're focused on what am I, then all of a sudden who you are goes to the wayside, and what I am is whatever this energy is that is causing my heart to beat. So if you take who you think you are and you prioritize focusing on whatever it is that is causing this heart to beat, and you make that the priority of your day, and you mean it.
Oh
You
yeah.
mean it. Like, you're like, this isn't like, oh, I'm gonna mess around. This is like, I don't care if I don't pay any bills. I don't care if I lose everything I have and go homeless. I'm going to stay in this space no matter what. It's like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
level of commitment. But, okay, here's the interesting thing about it. It doesn't, from what I was saying, it doesn't want us to have that. It doesn't want to punish us and have us be beaten up, and it wants us to actually be comfortable and taken care of and healthy and well, because it's in that state that we're able to be of service most. And so when I focus, and I played with this for a long time of like, okay, but I gotta build these companies, and oh, I gotta do this, and I gotta survive. But then I'm like, no, but then I'm supporting the very thing that's enslaving me. It makes no sense. But
Yeah. Yeah.
eventually I just got to this place where I was like, ooh, you know what? I'm too, I'm giving too much emphasis to the human identity, to the human ego, and making that the core of where I'm directing most of my attention. And that's where the problem is. So I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to take that ego, that human ego that's afraid about the bills and all that, and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm just not going to be afraid. As hard as that is, I'm going to keep surrendering it over here to this energy that's animating the being, that's causing the heart to beat. And I'm just going to do it with total faith and trust that some way, somehow, something is going to give me a sign that I'm doing the right thing. And every single time it has. And I've put this to the test time and time again. I mean, right at the edge of like, oh my God, I've lost everything. Am I going to lose everything again? All of it. And it always comes through every single time, to the degree now that like this is all like I've literally, I mean, I've given, literally taken vows. I've taken hardcore steadfast vows, like I don't care if I'm alone my entire life, I will live this life if not another single person ever is able to understand or relate to it. I know, I feel in my heart that this awareness in alignment with this source that is what is most important for my objective here, my evolutionary growth as this divine being integrating into human form. And I'm going to live true to that. Whether I'm alone, whether I do it without friends, whether I do, like if I'm out on the street, I didn't care. Like that level of commitment. I've made those vows, and you know what's happened? I've made tons of friends. I've have so much support. I have so many people who love me, and I'm like, God, it like makes me want to cry, because we think we need to give up all this stuff, you know? And maybe we do have to if we're addicted to it, or if we're so focused on it that it's consuming us. But it's only because what is on the other side that is really trying to connect to us and communicate with us is so much more beautiful and so much greater. And it is, my God, it just wants so much more for us than we want for ourselves on our best day.
Man, I got to tell you, Seth, that is just yeah, that one is. It's just like I'm taking a minute to man. That's yeah, that's moving through me.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. That is, yeah, because it seems like there's this, and I don't know if this is a Western world thing, but there's this, being versus doing, and I know I've had conversations with people like, Jeff, I don't have time to be because right now I've got to do, or I can't, or like you said, I can't get the bills paid. How's anything going to get done if I'm just focused on being? But yet somehow it does, right? It's yeah,
It does times infinity.
yeah,
That's the conundrum, right? You're like, well, what is the pot? Like, how is this even possible? And just to give people an idea too, like, I want to break this down in really basic terms so that people can get it too, because like we've talked about some amazing grand things that seem like, whoa, it seems like unobtainium, right?
oh
All
yeah,
that's actually happened for me, okay, like just from my own perspective, all that I've done is something that every single human being can do. I've just taken my attention away from thinking all these things that everybody told me were important, taken my attention away from that, and I've just focused it on what I felt was more important to me, which is that, okay, there's this source of energy that's causing I mean, just that one thing alone. There's a source of energy that's causing my heart to beat. Like, at what point does somebody be like, whoa, that, like, is that infinitely like mystery? Like, the mystery of that is so alluring. It's so beautiful. The potential of what that, like, I want to cultivate a relationship, a full-blown conscious relationship to whatever is causing my heart to beat. Like,
yeah, yeah.
and so essentially all I've done is that. I realized like that's the relationship I really, really want to have. Not with some beautiful woman, and I don't want not with some great company, not with all these things that everybody teaches us is so important, right? That we think we need to feel complete. I knew that there was something in me that wasn't complete, and whatever it was had to do with me becoming conscious of whatever this energy is. And so from there, okay, by just focusing on whatever this energy is that causes my heart to beat, suddenly my brain started getting in alignment with it. My gut started getting in alignment. All my other organs started getting in alignment with it. Then all of my glands and all of these different centers that have been wired together with hormones of stress are essentially, you know, they start coming undone. Because now, as every one of these glands produces hormones of stress that we need to survive, we think we need to survive, we're creating more solidity, right? We give more of this appearance of solidity to our personal environment. But we're
Yeah.
and that's so we're doing this. We're creating this hardcore prison for ourselves, layer upon layer upon layer. Sure, yeah, we live in a prison planet, but that's a result of us having done this for countless lifetimes without even realizing it. And now here we are coming to the point where we're realizing it. So I have just focused on my insides by being so in love with whatever this energy is that's causing the heart to beat that it has caused a change in all of these glands and organs. And so my pituitary gland, my pineal gland, my thyroid gland, they're not pumping out stress hormones. They're pumping out like, oh my God, like mini orgasms. I don't know how else to even
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah.
And so it's just pumping it out. So because I wake up and I make what I am the emphasis of what I'm focused on, suddenly I'm not Seth, right? I'm this energy that is causing Seth's heart to beat. And as a
Yeah.
result of that, all of these systems just turn on, they activate. And instead of like, oh my God, what am I gonna, I'm just like, my glands are pumping out these chemicals that are causing me to feel in love with my body, with life. And as a result of that, my energy field is expanding and it's breaking away layers of collective patterning that have built up through countless lifetimes of conditioning that we didn't even realize were there, but they are getting broken up. We're becoming conscious of them as we do this internal work, and they start to dissipate and go away. And then suddenly there's a lot less holding you back from who you think you are, what you really are, and the integration of this living geometric field into your human awareness. And when that living geometric field that you truly are and that you will be if you die, when you leave this body, when you integrate that into this body while you are still alive, what are we talking about here? I don't know. We're talking about something that nobody knows about. And that's the
Yeah.
life that I'm interested in. That's the future that I do my best to envision. And when I look at my beautiful child and these children that I see that are already aware of these higher virtues, I'm going to encourage them to look to the highest potential of what they can represent as of who they are, because it isn't at all about denying who you are. That's a very, very important piece in all this, but it's about putting it in its rightful place, right?
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
Everybody's got
Yeah.
it backwards. Everybody's focused on who they are and they don't even care what they are. They don't care less. I talk to people like, they're like, well, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in this. I'm like, well, what's causing your heart to beat? I don't know. Are you causing your heart to beat? No. Okay, so then you'd have to agree that there is something that is causing your heart to beat, that's causing all this stuff to happen in your body, that's way more intelligent than you are. I know it's way more intelligent than I am. I'm willing to
Oh,
admit that. And so once people start to realize that there's something way greater going on than them, than who they think
yeah.
they are, then suddenly they don't take things as serious. Like the way you and I are laughing, like we're smiling this whole time because you get to a point where you're like, holy shit, I've been so addicted to the seriousness of all this, and it's literally just wanted us to laugh with it the whole time.
It's beautiful, man. It
It's
is.
beautiful. I have a friend Andrew who said to me, he's like comedy, like just laughing, he's like, it's one of the most powerful tools, not just as a medicine. I mean, when you're laughing, you're happy, obviously, like your body feels incredible. But if you're truly embodying a state of like, this is a cosmic joke, how can any authority, like, what authority can't do anything to that? You're like,
I
look, I'm
love it.
not laughing at you. I'm laughing
Right.
with you, but you're so stuck in the seriousness of it. You think I'm laughing at you. I'm not. But I'm also
Yeah.
not going to stop laughing because of you.
Is that kind of like the old joke I remember as a kid? I remember like when kids would laugh at me. I remember my mother would always say, Jeffrey, they're laughing with you, and I was like, no, I don't think they're laughing with me. But that really is what this sounds like, isn't it? I mean, we are laughing with people, right? They may not want to laugh with us, but yeah,
They're
yeah,
just addicted to the seriousness of it. That's all. And we're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of all of it. Like there is no degree of separation except for that which we have unconsciously perpetuated out into the universe to the degree that we've created this great illusion that we've all bought into and keep giving life to. The sooner we be like, okay, you know what? Wow, we actually did this. We're going to take responsibility for it. We're going to stop being so afraid. We're going to actually love it unconditionally, unequivocally. Then suddenly the house of cards will fall. And again, I feel like it already has. That's why every single system around us is coming apart at the same time.
yeah. Man, yes, I just absolutely. Seth, I have to tell you, this has been incredibly moving. Man, this has been just and what's so beautiful about it is I didn't come into this conversation with you with any preconceived notions, and yet at the same time I feel like that everything that you've shared has also has spoken to what we are and not who we are. In other words, you and that's why I honor you. You've shared what you are, and that it has nothing to do with who you are. And that's a rare treat for me, man. That's a rare treat.
Well, what got you onto this path? Like what got you in the position where you're coming face to face with somebody like me?
Man, what a great question.
I would love to
I,
know.
yeah, to tell you the truth, what's really interesting is when I started this out, I moved to a different city. I didn't know anybody. I've since moved back to I'm basically back in the city where I grew up, but I spent about 3 years in another city where I didn't know anybody. And I woke up one day after, sitting on my ass for like 6 months, feeling sorry for myself. And there again, I don't want to get into like a whole story, but I mean, chronic depression, most of my adult life, and just, kind of always kind of imploding in on myself. And I thought, I think I'm just going to start actually reaching out to people and maybe doing some interviews. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but now I realize this is clearly this is what was supposed to happen. I didn't know it at the time, but it was really weird because I was busy being a guy that was worried about, what are people going to think about me? Are the questions I'm going to ask going to be stupid? What happens if I'm not sure, if I get lost and don't know what to ask, or I, stumble? And I met with I was interviewing a healer maybe like 2 years in, and she, like, her eyes got as big as $50, and she kind of like interrupted the interview, and she said, "Jeff, don't you understand? I mean, this is your practice. You're the person that actually you create this space for people." And I'm kind of like, what? And then we ended up talking for like 3 hours afterwards, and I'm like, that's what this has been about. Yeah, yeah. And man, I'm telling you, I've gone through the gyration of emotions, the feeling, being the human being, being focused on who I am, feeling, rejection if people don't answer when I reach out, or people say they're not interested, or if, people end up there again, I can get really easily caught in, who I think people are. And as much as I know that's not true, it's that whole thing about being human. But then it's just about, like you're talking about, you come back to this place, and you remember. And so I've been doing this for 4 years. It's been 4 years of remembering. Yeah, just remembering, man.
I love it. So it must be amazing because having done this for 4 years, like you've probably seen things change a lot, right? Since you started.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely, man. Without a doubt, without a doubt,
Mm.
and have made all kinds of mistakes. Yeah. It's so weird to think back that, and I think what's happened is I've learned more, in terms of it's been pointing back to what I am. But it just, for the longest time, I just, I was so busy trying to do something here. And what's so funny, what's so interesting now is this doesn't, mean it, as far as how many downloads. I mean, people listen to it, but it's, there's no longer this agenda. I feel like this is just my conduit. This is just having these kind of conversations. I mean, this to me is like the temple. Yeah.
See that I love that. I love that you've taken that route because again, this whole like there's so much conditioning of like, oh, you gotta do this, oh, you gotta do that, oh, then like no. Like we create all these little prisons, like this prison of caring what other people think is a huge one.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
man.
many people care about what other people think. And it's like, who gives a fuck? Like I I sing, okay? I love singing. But when I first started out, I couldn't sing. I sucked. I like literally couldn't. And I had so much fear over people hearing my singing voice. But I was like, well, you know what? I'm gonna do exactly the opposite of that. I'm gonna go audition for as many bands as I can,
I
knowing that
love
I can't. Literally, first time I went and I'd never even sang through a microphone. I heard my voice through a microphone. I was like, oh my God, this is what I sound like. And I was like, I wanted to throw the thing down and run out. My face was red as could be. But then I was like, wait a minute, what do I care?
Yeah.
And bit by bit by bit, I was like, I don't. Now it's to the point where that's why I've told you, like, I okay, not only do I have no fear of what people think about me or care, like, I want to inspire others to feel the same way. Be who you are. Express it. Say it to the world. And
Yeah.
okay, it may not come out so eloquent. You may not be able to articulate it the way you want or express it the way you want, but it's like a sculptor creating a statue. it's just by doing it bit by bit, and it's that commitment to it for the art of it, for the love of it, that
Oh
gets you
yeah.
to this place where you're like, wow, now I'm actually singing, you know? And that's what you're
Yes.
doing. That's what I love about it. Thank you.
Yeah,
My God.
man, absolutely. And I was going to say too, I always find it interesting that I remember as a kid or even as an adult, like marveling at people who could do things really, really well. But I'm wondering now if the lesson is at some point they had to do the same thing, right? They had to begin somewhere, right?
There's a great statement. There's no great, okay, there are great singers, but there are no great artists. So even though
Yeah,
somebody might have a great voice, the art of creating songs, very few people come out of the womb knowing how to sing entire songs beginning to end. Like that takes art, that takes work, that takes cultivating your craft. And the greatest works of any genius in any field, whether it be engineering or music, most typically come from those who are attuned with this energy field we've been talking about all night. Because
yeah.
there's this space, there's this space, a flow space between the appearance of your physical body and the energy field that you are. And when you become conscious enough of that, just by intentionally wanting to become conscious of it, you realize that there's like this in between point. And when you're in that space between the energy body and the appearance of the physical body, you're in a flow. You can feel it. It's like plasma. And you can use that and move it and touch it and direct it and manipulate it. Okay. And I want to make it clear the word manipulation I'm using in a loving way, not in a
Yeah,
malevolent
yeah.
way. It's a benevolent. You're allowed to because you're co creating with the source of your energy field. And you can focus that on anything, whether that's healing
Oh
other
yeah.
people, whether it's healing yourself, whether it's creating great art or great music, whether it's communicating, all of this can be applied through you, the individual. And this is, like I said at the beginning, we have more gifts, each and every one of us, than there are stars in the sky at night, but we aren't using them because we're too busy working 9 to 5 or all thinking and worrying about all these things that make no difference. Okay, I'm nobody's slave. I'm nobody's pet. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I might be somebody's pet on a playful am. That's another story. My point, I
Yeah.
am nobody's slave. I am I love the nature of what it is that allows me to exist, that I will stand in the face of all that seek to oppress me fearlessly with love in my heart, knowing that that love will represent who and what I truly am. And it has. I have been in the court of man, I have been in cosmic court. And despite how afraid I had been at certain moments, I had been able to tap into that. And it always was there every single time. And it's there for all of us.
Man, I tell you what, Seth, I literally feel like this is the first conversation I have had with someone who, in this case, this conversation has been. I'm not saying that other people have not been in touch with this. I definitely don't want to say that, but I had a feeling this conversation tonight was going to be formative. It was going to be there was going to be something about this. I had no idea. And all I did was I just had an intuition about it. I didn't want to have any expectations. I certainly didn't want to put any expectations on you or have any agenda. But I'm telling you, man, this is where it's at. This is the sweet spot. You know,
Oh man, I love it.
it's
And it's just beginning too because we're going to see this happen a lot. Like
yeah,
a lot suddenly out of nowhere, we're going to see all this great talent just spring to life. We're going to see these beings who are like, "What? Really?" It's just going to
yeah.
happen. Now, we're going to go through some rough spots. There's no doubt about it. Like there's going to
Oh
be
yeah.
some shit that needs to be shoveled. But you
Oh
know
man,
what?
yeah.
Out of that, some fresh new growth is going to come. And
Man,
it's going to be amazing.
man, I'll tell you what. I thank you so much. I honor you. And man, you in terms of sharing joy with other people, you have definitely brought joy to me tonight, brother. I will tell you that right now, man. It's thank you.
Well, I'll do it again sometime if you want
I
to.
would love to, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was going to say that's the other thing I was going to say to you is I get the sense, this intuitive sense, this is not our last conversation, man. No expectations, no agenda, but yeah.
There's a lot in you. I know I spoke a lot and did a lot tonight, but there's a lot that I would love to reflect back to you because I feel that you have the ability to react to it or respond to it in a way that is complementary and that will augment what it is that we're referring to in a way that will really help those who are paying attention. Because that's what this is about. Like, the more that who we are starts to focus on what we are, meaning all these people, when they focus on their own source and they make that the priority, who they are is going to blossom like a sunflower in the sun. Like, it's
Oh man, yes. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. Well, I definitely look forward to doing it again, and I'd obviously love to any time that you feel like it's time. And I was going to ask you in terms of with your live streaming, is it okay to go ahead and stop the recording at this point, or I just didn't
yes.
want to affect
Let me
anything with
do
your live
that.
stream.
Nope. I'm going to stop right now.
All right.